What's going on, everybody? Thanks for checking out the Among the Ashes podcast tonight. We're your hosts, Wes and Chris. Tonight's episode is the season finale, season 1 finale, episode 10, with a good friend of mine. It's a banger. We're bringing on Tommy Black tonight. Tommy and I have been friends since high school. Tommy was goth rocker before goth rocker became a trend. Tommy's going to share about his life as a kid and how it was filled with abuse and how he took solace in writing and performing music. He's going to share about his bands and how he landed in the entertainment industry, but not in the way that he expected. Tommy has toured with Jeff Foxworthy, Larry the Cable Guy, and most recently he and his son are on tour with the infamous Cat Williams of all people. Man, that's got to be a trip, as well as many other big name acts. Everyone get ready for the season finale, Success Among the Ashes, with Tommy Black. What's up, everybody? Thanks for checking out the Among the Ashes podcast tonight. We are your hosts, Wes and Chris. Chris, how you doing tonight, man?
Doing good. How are you, Wes?
Doing good, man. You worked today?
Yeah, I did.
Yeah, you tired?
I showed up.
Showed up. You didn't do anything?
Well, I'm not going to say I'm there, but.
Right. I got you. I'll be honest with you. I did work today here in the studio, but it was not at my job. And it was pretty great. I'm not going to lie. So, on tonight's episode, we're bringing on a longtime friend of ours, or friend of mine since high school, Mr. Tommy Black. Tommy, how you doing, man?
Hey, I'm good. How you doing, brother?
Man, I'm doing good. How was your day?
Man, it was good. Spent some time with my mom, and I didn't get a nap, so unfortunately, but yeah, it was a good day. It's a good day.
Well, I 100% did for about 2 hours, and you text me and woke me up. No, Chris texted me and woke me up, and then you text me right after that. So I probably needed to go up, and I slept for another 20 minutes. So it was pretty awesome.
It's a good thing. It's amazing how older we get, the more we need those naps.
I'm 20. I don't know about y'all.
Yeah, I wish I could claim that.
Right. Well, I'm lying.
The gray in his beard is just wisdom.
Right. Well, that's fashion.
Is that what it is?
Oh, yeah. The ladies do the gray in the hair. So I do gray in the beard.
They call it silver.
That's what it is.
Yeah,
silver fox. That's what
fox.
it is.
I'd say it's my silver lining.
Yep. Yeah. There it is. Yeah. That's the truth there. Well, man, I mean, we have known each other since probably maybe before, but my 11th grade year in high school, I guess.
Yeah. A long time.
So
we don't want to talk about how many years, but long time ago.
Well, I mean, I will straight up tell you, it's been 27 years since I graduated. So that would be 28 years minimum we've known each other. So
right.
Yeah, that's crazy. It's crazy to think.
It is.
Go ahead.
No. I was just saying it is. Absolutely.
Right. Yeah, 100%. It goes fast. Chris, I'll tell you a little bit about Tommy. Tommy was the scariest guy I knew in high school. Like, one year he shaved his head and eyebrows just because, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like, if Marilyn Manson had a brother, it was Tommy. He scared me. Like, to physically look at Tommy, it was scary, but then he would talk to you and he was just so nice.
Mm-hmm.
It was crazy. It was so weird to see the quintessential rocker kid or hardcore kid, and then him just have a heart as big as gold. It was pretty awesome. But yeah, he was pretty scary at times. And I remember they had a band, and we our mutual friend of ours, he and Tommy had a band, and I remember Tommy had a baby doll on a noose and would swing that baby doll around there a little bit. So it's funny, Candace, whenever we talk about you, Candace is like, I always remember that baby doll on a noose. Like, yeah, Tommy had the shock value for sure, man.
So he left memories for sure.
Absolutely, man. Absolutely.
Did lots of Christmas lights and lots of baby dolls on nooses. Yeah. That was the image for me.
Yeah, but you had a good time though, right?
I did. I had fun.
Yeah. So why don't you tell us a little about that, man? How'd you get into music?
So I grew up in a weird situation. Like, my aunt and uncle had basically they adopted me, but they used ill will to do it. They just took advantage of circumstances, and I ended up being an abused kid, and I had to deal with it some way. So even before I was doing bands, I was writing music, writing lyrics. And so I would write all the time. And then we had an exchange student named Mario, which has passed on now. But
I did not know that.
Yeah, Mario is no longer with us. Yeah, he's no longer with us. But he he wanted to do a band. We wanted to play the Christmas thing at the school that year, and so we wrote a punk rock Christmas song called "Santa Came, but I'm Not Home" or "No One's Home" or something. Um, and so we wrote this sad Christmas song and played it and had a good time doing it. And then from there, I ended up, getting into Manson and White Zombie and all that, and incorporating that into the music. So it was fun. It was natural for me, and to go from writing those lyrics about abuse and being misunderstood to putting them to music and actually letting people identify with them was a blessing.
So, so talk about that a little bit if you want to. When you say abuse, um,
Sure.
how deep you
Yeah.
want to go there?
So I went through both physical, mental, verbal abuse from my adopted dad to being raped by my uncle as a kid as well. And so I've seen all kinds of abuse through the years, and I had abandonment issues because I didn't understand the situation of what happened with my parents, and ended up in that home I ended up in. So as a kid, it was great, but when I started to form my own opinion, that's when uh, my uncle couldn't handle it and started being abusive. And um, I moved out before I graduated high school. I turned 18 and I moved out, and I was he would always tell me I would end up in prison before I was 18 and stuff like that. But I wasn't doing anything wrong. I just had a different opinion than he did, and so I moved out when I was 18 and ended up finishing school on my own the last year and a half. And I'm proud of that because it would have been easy to just quit and walk away.
Sure.
But yeah, I've seen all kinds of abuse as a kid and a teenager that I unfortunately dealt with on my own. I wish I would have reached out and got some help, but um, I just kind of wrote and dealt with it, by myself.
Sure. And I remember that. I remember you, you know, you moving out or whatever. I didn't know why.
Yeah,
Matter of fact, didn't even know it up until this moment. It's pretty tragic and amazing at the same time. I mean, to go through that, but then to be a young man, it would have been easy just to walk away and just say the heck with it. I'm going to do my own thing. But to
right.
finish school and push forward, I mean, that's huge. It answers a lot of questions for me from the school days for sure. Now, I mean, I get it. I always remember saying, um, Tommy's just so nice. I don't understand why. And I don't know if you were a believer then. Now I know you are. I know you are today, but back then, it's like to me, like I would say in my mind, like Tommy's heart is too big to be so black. Does that make
Right.
sense? Like,
It
to be
does.
so dark, but like you had always had such a giving heart to me. Um, just super friendly and super nice. And I mean, you, you really exemplified Christ in a lot of ways without even knowing it, I would say, as far as when we were young.
Yeah, I was angry with God, and back then I was a guy that if you invited me to church, I was likely to cuss you out and tell you that your God didn't exist and just anything to shock you and be shock value. But I I was angry because I was a good kid, but I didn't know why I got put through those situations. So to me, it was like if there was a God, then how could those situations happen to a good child? And
Sure.
I took that out on God and I shouldn't have. And now looking back, I can see how God still was there for me, even though I wasn't believing. God was still there for me and helped me through the years. And I can look back on it now and see that God had his hand involved in everything.
Well, absolutely. I mean, that really kind of sums up our podcast. A few years ago, probably 4, maybe 5 years ago, God laid this on my heart. I'm pissing and moaning because it's like, well, God, you've called me to minister and I have nowhere to do it. And he's like, well, social media is wide open, you know, and my job allows me to do so. Excuse me. My job allows me to do so. If somebody's having issues and they're at my desk, nothing's ever said, especially if we're talking about Jesus or whatever, and um, but I want to grumble and complain. about not having a pulpit, you know what I mean? Not having a stage to be on to minister, but yet God's opened that door. And, you know, whenever I started seriously thinking about doing this, people started giving me equipment. Chris gave me a computer. My wife started buying me microphones and things. And, it's like, okay, I'm forced to do it, but I don't have a name. And I've been going through some stuff spiritually, emotionally, a lot of depression, and I think a lot of it's got to do with other people, you know what I mean, for other people. And I think a lot of it's got to do with this, like, you know, maybe I'm interceding, I don't know, but God took me to Job, and I read in Job chapter 2, it says that, you know, that Job sat on his ash heap. I can't talk tonight. That Job sat on his ash heap, scraping his sores, and people kept coming by and just basically telling him what he did wrong. You know, you must have sinned against God. You've angered God. You've done this. You've done that. But we know that the scriptures there before that says that he was a righteous man. He done nothing wrong. And thus for among the ashes was born, because my thoughts are, what if more people would just sit among the ashes with people instead of trying to give them advice on how to change or how to do things differently. Um, and one other thing I gathered from that was it took Job petitioning God 38 times for God to answer him. Now, if it took Job 38 times to get an answer, how much longer is it going to take me to get an answer?
Right.
You know. And then whenever God did answer Job, just to paraphrase here, but God basically said, "Where were you whenever I created the heavens and earth? Where were you whenever I gave you everything you have? You were nowhere to be found, but yet I did it, and it's good. So basically, sit back, shut up, quit whining. I've got you." And you know, we can apply that all to our lives in a lot of ways. I mean, how can God allow something like that to happen to a good kid? Um, but at the same time, I think it helps. It's hard to say because it's tragic and it's awful, and I don't understand how God can sit back and watch that happen. But at the same time, it defines us a lot of times and creates the men and women of God that He calls us to be, if that makes
Right.
sense. You know what I mean? I'm fully I'm fully invested in the theory that if I've been through a situation, I can help you get out of it. If I've never
Right.
been through it, I can be sympathetic, I can be empathetic, but if I've walked it, I can tell you how I got out of it. Does that make sense?
Yeah. And
And
I
maybe
can tell you it for me, I questioned it even as a non-believer into my 20s and 30s. And God came to me and at one point when I was upset and depressed about it and said, because you could handle it.
mhm.
And that was my answer, is because you could handle it and I could help others. And that,
Now that's so like confirming to me. I ask all the time, and seems to be the answer I get, is because I know you're strong enough.
yeah,
You
I
know,
mean, that's it. And I wasn't a believer at the time, but it gave me the peace I needed.
right?
And now I can look back on it and know for sure, that that's what it is. And that's what I have to do. It's, the night that I got saved and found Christ, I knew instantly I had to tell my testimony, and I had to share with others so I could help, you
Sure.
know, otherwise there's no reason for everything that I went through.
Right. I remember seeing you post that on Facebook, and I was just like, "Woo, yes!" You know, talk to me. You know, I was so
Yeah,
excited, so pumped. You know, so that's been, God, it's been several years ago now, right?
it's been a lot. Yeah, it's been, gosh, I don't know, 6 years ago, maybe 5 or 6 years ago. Yeah,
Right. Right.
somewhere
Um,
around there.
right. So, in those 5 or 6 years, have you had many opportunities to be able to share your testimony?
So I've given it at a few different churches, and I gave it at a ministry recently. Uh, the Christians United Ministries. I was taking a class, and I got invited to share my testimony there, so I got to do it there. But I I do give it anytime I can. I try to. So
Absolutely.
and every time, except for the class, somebody comes up to me going, "Hey, I've been through that," or needing to talk, and
Absolutely.
and and that's what it's all about, is that one person.
Sure. And that's
If it
that's one
helps
thing.
one,
Absolutely right. I've always said that in anything I've been involved in, even this podcast, is if it touches one person, you know what I
yeah,
mean? If it changes one person, I know it's already changed me in a lot of ways. Like it's brought me, it's funny because it's nerve-wracking and it's a lot of work. A lot of long nights sitting up in here in this little closet, editing videos or harassing Chris to see when Chris can be here and trying to find people to come on, but like it's so fulfilling. Does that make
Right.
sense? Like,
Yes.
and it's brought me a lot of peace. So I know if it's doing that for me, and maybe that's the whole reason behind it. Maybe God's just trying to help me work through my issues, but I also believe that it's going to help others, on the opposite end here, like you, help you work through issues, or even people that are listening, help them do the same. So that's kind of the goal. Well, I've rambled on and on and on. So man, I'm just going to give you the floor. You start where you want to start. I do want to hear about the touring days and all that
Sure.
stuff. You know what I mean? You playing music and uh, you know, traveling with these different comedians and bands and just the interesting life of Tommy Black. Like I want to know all about it. So, and I'm sure our listeners do too. So I'm gonna let you have it, man.
Yeah, I mean, that's the crazy thing. I mean, I was in high school meeting bands through a buddy of mine and getting to go to shows and meeting some of my heroes back then. I think the first one I went to him with him and met the band Collective Soul at the time, and those guys were great, and it was really cool. And then I got to go and hang out with Korn a bunch in high school and meet Snoop Dogg and do things that I'd never dreamed of. And and that's where I look back now and I see that God had his hand in it, is I wouldn't have made those connections had God not had his hand and been
Sure.
been, showing me the way. But it
Well,
was
hang on just one second. It shows you how God moves because you were a big Corn fan
right.
and Head gets saved.
Yes.
You know what I mean? So I see, and maybe other people wouldn't put that together, but for me, it's like, what better way for God to reach you than
Right.
allow you to meet the people that you quote unquote idolize. I don't mean like you made them an idol, but people that you look up to, people that
Yeah.
that you enjoy their music and you follow in their footsteps or trying to, and then you get to meet him and he's given his heart to Christ and now you have too. I mean, it's just come full circle.
Well, and that's where it did come full circle is because of Head becoming a Christian. I became a Christian. I'd lost my wife, my first wife, and through my own uh, fault, and I was depressed and suicidal, and I was backstage at a corn show, and I didn't want to be there for anything in the world. And there's, millions of fans that would give anything to be where I was, and I didn't want to be there, but God kept putting in my head, ask Head to pray for you, ask Head to pray for you, and I was a non-believer still, and so I was like, man, I told my buddy Steve, I was like, I just keep having this feeling I need to ask Head to pray for me. And he was like, man, it wouldn't hurt. And so when I saw Brian again, I was like, hey, man, will you pray for me? And he kind of looked strange and said, yeah, what's going on? And I was like, man, I just lost my wife of 16 years. And, he's like, whoa, hold on. He's like, I've got a buddy here. He's like, would you mind if I bring him in to pray for you? And I was like, no problem. And that guy ended up being Todd White. And I had no idea who that guy was, but he came and prayed for me. And in the middle of, I didn't tell him I was suicidal. I never got a chance to, but in the middle of praying for me, he stopped and whispered in my ear. He's like, stop. He's like, it's not worth it. And he's like, suicide's not the answer, brother.
Wow.
And I wanted to cry so bad, but I couldn't. And all I could say at the end was, I believe, and that moment forward was it. But, without my love of music and my love of corn and God telling me to get Head to pray for me that night, I wouldn't be a believer now. But that moment changed everything in my life. My ways of being an adulterer and I guess that's the word. I don't know, but I was a womanizer. I just didn't. I wanted the attention of every woman out there. I sought that attention, and that ended that night. Everything ended that night, and
That's amazing.
I never looked back.
That's
So
amazing. See
yeah,
the seeds that the enemy planted in a child when you were raped by your uncle, all that
right,
trauma, that abuse is probably what led you to do the things that you did.
right,
before you met Christ, and that just shows you how when he shows up on the scene, um, he'll deal with it if you're ready. Just like the woman with an issue of blood in the Bible, it never says she was unrighteous or unholy. It just says that she had an issue, even though everybody saw her as unrighteous and unholy because of her problem. But when she met Christ, she met him where he was at. All that was done away with.
Right.
So in turn you find healing, and I'm sure you're not without problems now, not without issues now, like we all are, but you have peace now.
Right.
If that
And
makes sense.
you still get depression and loneliness at
Sure,
times, but like it's not like it used to be.
sure,
It's not, I mean, used to, it was I had to have that attention all day, every day. I had to have the attention not just of my wife, but of anybody. And now, I live alone. I've got my own apartment. I'm For the most part, I'm good. I have moments where I get lonely, but like I said, it's nothing major. It's something I can just tune out and move
sure,
on.
sure,
And that's God. And if I wouldn't be here today if it wasn't for one, my son who was living with me, and I didn't want him to find my body was the only reason I didn't do it at that time. But without him and Brian Head Welch and Todd White and God, mainly God, I wouldn't be here. He
sure,
put all the places there. He put everybody in place for it to happen. Like he had a plan, and I was just a piece of that puzzle. So
sure. Which is
uh,
greater than even where you're at right now. You know what I
it
mean?
is.
I mean, I'm a firm believer that this very moment right here, like everything in our moment has brought us, or in our lives has brought us to this moment right now, and it's for a reason. You know, it may seem insignificant. We're just two buddies, three buddies hanging out talking, two buddies from high school, two buddies from youth group. Y'all meet, now you're friends. It may
Right.
seem insignificant, but it's not. You know what I
No.
mean? We walk away encouraged and lifted up, and then somebody else walks away encouraged and lifted up, and we think about all of the. And don't get me wrong, like I have a great life, you know what I'm saying? Like I do, and that's what's mind blowing to me that I struggle the way I struggle is because like outside looking in, my life's perfect. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like a lot of people would give anything in the world to trade places with me, and then there's some days I just can't see the forest for the trees. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like, and I don't get it. I don't understand it. But it goes back to me feeling like if I've struggled with it and I've came through it, I can show somebody else. You know?
Right. You can, but also, and that's something I've always been good at is taking other people's situations and adopting those and being able to tell their story too and help somebody with it.
Hmm.
So even like you may take from my story and be able to help somebody, and that's amazing to me. And
Yeah,
that's God.
absolutely.
He puts those experiences in front of you for a reason.
Right. And I firmly believe that's what we're here for. It's love God and love your neighbor. You know what I mean? You do these two things, you may enter into heaven. If we're doing those two things, then we're helping people, you know.
Absolutely.
Here,
Absolutely. Which is what it's all about.
absolutely. All right, so I interrupted you there again.
It's
So
all
so
good.
take it, man.
So, you know, some of the other stuff that God has blessed me with was, like I said, meeting bands and stuff, um, which eventually led to opportunity to work for bands. My buddy Mike Nash was when I met him, he was the tour manager for Skid Row, which was my favorite band from day one. And I met him, and when he left Skid Row, he worked for a bunch of different people like John Wade and Jody Messina, Chris Cagle. He works now for a country singer named Joe Nichols,
Hmm.
and I help him out as much as I can. But he would just ask me, if I could help him out, so I'd go show up wherever he was and sell merch for him or whatever. And then one night, I got offered a job. He was working for Chris Cagle, and Cagle wanted to bring me on the bus and offer me a job, and that was another blessing from God that some little punk kid from Dora High School could only dream of, but turned into a reality. So I started out doing country music, and I worked for Chris Cagle and Jody Messina and Easton Corbin and Josh Turner, and so filled in for a lot of people, and that was cool. And I was still going to rock shows and meeting bands and meeting some of my heroes growing up. And being around, but I had a really bad experience with a country singer working for him, and then I was like, man, I'm done. I'm never going to do this again. And like, as soon as I said that, I got a phone call from this group in Nashville I used to work for, and they were like, "Hey, would you like to go out with Larry the Cable Guy?" And I was like, "Yes, absolutely." And so they drew me right back in. I was like, "Man, I can't turn down Larry the Cable Guy. That's going to be fun." And so I
Well,
got
it's
to go
funny,
out
like
and do that.
your aspirations of being in the quote unquote business, you may not be in it the way you thought you would be in it, but yet you are connected to it. You know what I mean?
Right.
And that's a crazy story within itself of just following your dreams and your passions. And again, that's how God works in our lives. It's not always about um, how we think we should be doing it. Just like me thinking, I'm going to pastor, I'm going to be on a stage, preaching to, thousands of people or traveling the world and preaching and doing all these things. But I can reach thousands of people doing right here what I'm doing in my own house. You know what I mean?
Absolutely.
It may not be the avenue I'm thinking it is, but it's still doing what God's called me to be, or what God's called me to do, and what I feel like I should be doing in my heart. You know what I mean? Same with you. I mean, it may not be you, the one on stage, but yet you are in the business. You are a part of that life, so to speak, probably without the headaches of being a part of that life. You know what I mean?
Right.
The stresses of it.
Yeah, absolutely. And that was something I looked at, and I taught my kids was, I wanted to be a rock star, and I ended up selling merch for a bunch of famous artists. And same thing, I was like, man, you want to be a race car driver, but look at what else you can do that would be a good backup, that you could
Mhm.
still work in that business.
Sure.
And he he's kind of come away from that, and he works with me for Cat Williams now, and we get to travel the United States working for great comedians, and get to have that bond, and that's God too, with that. I mean, I got a bad back. I can't work, but Cat blessed me with an opportunity, that God put in front of him and said, "Hey man, what if I hire your son to do the work and you just kind of manage?" And
Hmm.
it's hard to say no to that, you
Absolutely.
know. But it's all God, and looking at perspective, I'm not on the stage doing that side of things, but I still get to go out and enjoy that lifestyle, and still get to be home as well during the week and enjoy family time. And I got the best of both worlds. I really do.
Well, yeah, being on the road with your son, getting to see the United States is pretty huge. You know what I
It
mean?
is. It is, except for when I made him drive in New York. He couldn't handle that. He hated that. But that was fun.
Well, I've been to New York once, and I took a cab from Radio City Music Hall to the Trade Towers, which is, I don't know, a couple miles, and it
Right.
took like 40 minutes.
Oh
Like I've
yeah.
lost nothing in New York. Nothing. I've
No.
seen it. I'm seeing it. It's cool, but I
Yeah.
never want to go back there. I for sure wouldn't want to drive there, at least not in the city.
Yeah, and that was the thing. We were at Madison Square Garden, so we were right dead center, and
Right in the heart of it. Yep.
and yeah, he hated it. He hated driving down there. But I told him, I said, "You've drove in New York City. You can drive anywhere in the world
I'm telling you, man, we jumped in that little cab and that little dude was like, "Where are y'all
now."
going?" And we told him, and bro, I mean, he's taking on 18 wheelers, and it's like this cab is not gonna win. He's me me. I mean, like every 30 seconds, me 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 me, just on that horn, and I'm like, we're gonna die, but yet he got us there, man. He did it. I mean, it's like, whew. And I looked at him. I said, how is it when you get at home at night? And he said, oh, I'm wore out. I'm
Oh, I
stressed.
bet.
He said, I'm driving all day and you think it's just driving, but no, you're defensively driving. I watched a bicycle come down past us, a couple of cars ahead of us, and this one car is merging to the right, and the bicycle's merging to the left, and the bike's not giving up the lane. He's not
No.
like he's not. I've got this, and that car keeps coming over, and he just hits his brake and just pounds the hood of that car, and he's like, "I'm riding here." And I'm like, holy crap, this is just like the movies. You know what I mean? It's like it's
It
absolutely like what
is.
you see in the movies. It was pretty insane.
It is absolutely, and it is. It's crazy to drive there. It's crazy the way people are there. you never want to hear a horn again in your life when you
Oh
leave
no,
there.
it was all day long.
Yeah, yeah, that's funny.
It was all day long, and then don't speak to anybody because they're not speaking back to you.
No, not at all.
And the ones who do speak to you are not being nice; they're trying to hustle money out of you.
Right.
I remember this. Evidently, there was some sort of rap group. We're taking pictures of the Christmas tree there at where it's at, the big tree, and this rap group walks up, and first, we're being approached. We're three Caucasian men in New York, I guess. You know what I mean? I hate to say this in the way it's going to sound, but we're being approached by three guys that are pretty large, and you begin to start panicking a little bit, you know what I mean? And they were super nice. Hey, bro, what's up? How's it going? They're talking to us. They're shoving stuff in our hands. Check out our band. Check out this. Check out that. And he was like, we've got Apple Pay. We've got Cash App, we've got Venmo, da 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 da. And I'm holding just a little piece of paper. It looked like a CD cover, And I'm like, what am I supposed to do with this? He's like, well, this is how you get our album. And I'm like, okay, man, cool. I start to walk off, and he's like, hold up, bro. Like bass in his voice, you know what I mean? And I'm like, did I do something wrong? He's like, you got to pay for that. And I was like, well, I don't want it. And he just snatched it back and kind of turned his head, and somebody else was walking by and gave him the same pitch. You know what I mean? Like $20 for a piece of paper. It's like, I don't even know who you are, man. Like if you're trying to promote your band, hey, great. I'll listen to it, but I'm not paying for it. Like, no, I'm not doing that, but yeah, New York is an interesting city for sure.
It is. It is. I love New York. I got to go to New Jersey, which I'd always wanted to go to because my favorite band's from there. And
Mm-hmm.
getting to go, everywhere is awesome. I love LA. California is always a great place, but traveling is such a great benefit to the job. I don't get to see much of the cities other than, passing through, but it's a
Yeah.
blessing just to do it. Yeah.
And that's me for work. Like when we go, we might get out at night, go to dinner, you know what I mean? But it's not like we really get to just see anywhere. And we were in New Jersey, and the customer we were seeing, we did our thing that day, and he's like, what are y'all going to do tomorrow? And it's like, well, if you got some customers, we'll call on them. He's like, absolutely. Let's go to the city first. So we run up there for a couple hours, and we come back and called on customers. And so, it was pretty neat to get to see those things and be with a local, I guess, you know what I mean? But yeah, I've missed nothing there. I don't care to ever. My kids, I want to go. It's like, well, whenever you're grown and you've got your own family, you can go, because I'm not going back to New York, not unless I'm getting paid to do so. So,
Well, I go back. We go back about once a year, so we'll be back in New York City within the next 6 months or so, I'm sure. So we're blessed to go, back and forth, and we go about once. Cat hits every area about once a year,
yeah,
and so I know I'll be back there, but I know Sebastian, he's already saying we're going to get a cab to go anywhere we go.
right.
He's
So
like,
he
I'm
doesn't
not
have to
driving
go.
through that again. Yeah.
Right. It was
So,
definitely. Have you ever been there, Chris?
No, that's where my wife wants to go. Though.
Like, I mean, don't get me wrong. Like when you're walking down through Times Square, like
yeah.
it's mind blowing.
Yeah.
Like it is. Like every neuron in your brain is firing. You ever been to Vegas?
No.
Okay, Vegas is the same way.
Yeah.
Like well, I guess New York, everything in Vegas is big. Like I equate Vegas to being like Gotham City.
Right.
Like if Gotham City was real, that would be Las Vegas. But New York, it's still larger than life, but it's not so cartoonish, if that makes sense. But everywhere you look, when you're walking from Madison Square, we went, we come out of Madison Square and hung a left. We come in on the subway, hung a left, and went up to 30 Rock. But everything through Times Square there is just an electronic billboard. Like everything. And then every other shop is a weed shop. So, it's like you can get high walking the streets, and if that's not good enough, you can bump in the weed stores. And then you've got a 3-story M&M building. I don't know, man. It's just all kind of shops, and I don't know. It's just crazy. And then people you're either stepping over people in the street or you're bumping into them as you're walking down it.
Right.
And this was at like 9 o'clock on a Wednesday morning. You know what I mean?
Right.
So it wasn't even at night,
Yeah,
or on the weekend. I can't imagine what it would be like, which it was, the holiday time. But But yeah, it was something to see for sure. Glad I saw it. Glad I didn't have to pay for it. And I hope I never have to go back.
And yeah, and I imagine everything in New York is kind of like DC. Everything's open all night.
Yeah,
I'm sure.
I'm sure.
And it makes me think. So I had a lady one time in a previous job. She come in. I used to be a salesman, and she come in. She was like, "Yeah, I'm from DC," and she was like, "I can't get nothing to eat past like 8:30 at night." And I was like, "No,
Yeah,
it
not
ain't
not in
happening down
Alabama.
here.
It's
No,
not happening.
you're not gonna." Mm-mm.
Yeah, I've never been to DC. My brother-in-law was in a band. They had a band called Ohio Avenue, and they played up there one year, and they were not too far from the Capitol where they were playing. And they said, "Hey, let's ride down there." So they're in their van and their trailer. Well, I can't remember if it was Casey or Chad that was driving, but they turned on a street that literally said no trailers. Like
Oh,
there
wow.
was a big sign posted, and he said, Wesley, no sooner than we turned on that street, friggin' Secret Service was there, had us pulled over, pulled us out of the van. They're searching us, they're searching the van, pulled everything out of the trailer, all the musical equipment, all this stuff, and then was like, "You idiots, can you not read a sign? It says no trailers." And they were like, "Sorry, man, our bad." And then they did that going into Canada one time. They wanted to see the border and realized there was nowhere to turn around. So I think it was Casey that was driving. So he drove through the border to turn around, and none of them had passports.
Oh
So
no.
they were able to get into Canada, okay, but coming back out of Canada, they were in trouble. So but yeah, I wouldn't do well traveling either.
It's
That's
not
all.
bad. It's not bad. Chris, you should definitely take your wife and go at least
Yeah.
once.
Yeah, she wants to go to a Broadway show, see Times Square, just go for like a weekend or something. So
Yeah.
Chris, Tommy will lead you astray. You should definitely not go. I'm just kidding. I'm just kidding.
I should
So
do it. You should do it at least once.
yeah. So tell
That
us
way you know.
yeah,
yeah,
that way
yeah,
you've
absolutely.
experienced, you know what I mean? You know for
Just
yourself.
don't take the kids, right?
I would not. I
Okay,
would not at
okay,
least not until
gotcha,
they're older for
gotcha.
sure.
Yeah,
Carson would be
he,
he
I would lose
Carson would
him.
be all over the
Yeah.
place, man. Yeah, yeah. So tell us about your band days. Tell us about playing music and how you got into that. Well, you told us how you got into it, but how did it progress?
We started out. It's funny because when we wrote the first song, that Christmas song, just Mario and me in my bedroom and Dora, it was really punk rockish, and Green Day had just hit. So I actually sang it like that, like Green Day style, and then my mom was like, that's terrible. You guys shouldn't do that kind of music, of course. And so we were like, okay. So I was like, all right, so we'll go Rollins band instead. So I went Henry Rollins on it instead, and that became my style of singing. And then as I got into Manson, of course, it progressed into a very Marilyn Manson-ish kind of style. Um, and then eventually become my own style of just me doing me, um, which is great and what I prefer. And it's funny because, and I think I told you this, but like my band name, that the last project I really enjoyed was called Beyond the Ashes,
Yeah.
and I still put out music under that name. um, but we almost called ourselves Among the Ashes, and almost From the Ashes. But those were taken, and so we went with Beyond the Ashes. And
Yeah, I think Beyond the Ashes was one of the names we had written down as
Probably
well.
was. That's kind of strange,
It
isn't
was,
it?
yeah,
That's
yeah,
weird.
yeah. Well, there again, it just kind of goes to show you how God works, and maybe I knew that subconsciously. I don't know, uh,
He
but
did, Tommy. He's stealing it
yeah,
from you. That's
I'm
what it is.
that's fine.
taking it from Tommy.
That's fine. A Christian group stole it from me too.
Yeah, I think there's a band called Among the Ashes. Whenever I was researching this, like I found them on Facebook, which they hadn't posted anything since like 2016. So, guys, if we're stepping on you, sorry. Um, talk
He's
to me.
not sorry.
Yeah,
He's
we'll
not
figure
sorry
it
at
out.
all.
But, we're a podcast. We're not music. So,
Yeah.
um, so you
But
progress.
so we progressed and did our own thing, and we when it become Beyond the Ashes, it really took off, and we did really well locally. We played in Augusta, Georgia as well, and did well over there, and had a good time. And wrote some good music that I can still listen to now, and it's still great. And it's, gosh, that was 2001 or so. So it's been quite a while. But I can still listen to it and enjoy it. Um,
Now, was your brother involved in that?
so he wasn't involved. He played bass at one show for us back in the Mordia days. And then I've done stuff with him on the side as well.
Yeah.
And the last song I recorded was a song that he had written, and he had never done lyrics and I'd never done vocals for it, but he had wrote this beautiful song. And after he passed, my uncle heard it. I let him hear it, and he started singing to it and was like, "Lord, when it rains." And I was like, that's it. That's the name of the song, and that's the thing there. So when it rains, I finished the lyrics for it and recorded it and put it up. And that's the last thing I did, and what I thought would be the last thing I ever did. But I'm finding myself wanting to write again now.
Well, it's like we talked about the other night. We're created in God's image, right? And
Right,
God's the creator.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't think it's coincidental that in the day and time, the digital age that we live in, I don't think it's coincidental that people who do social media and things like that are called creators. Because in just doing our intro and our outro, it may suck to everybody else. I mean, everybody may think it looks like trash. I mean, nobody's going to tell me, the internet will tell me, but none of my friends are going to tell me if it's bad. But to me, like, I feel like it looks good. The only criticisms I've got is, hey, it's a little long, and it's like it is, but it's my creation, so I'm okay with that. You know what I mean?
right,
But like, you talk about feeling accomplished. You know
Mm-hmm.
what I'm saying? Like, I took something that I didn't really know how to do and just did it with the Lord's help and Chris's guidance, and we've created this, and it gives you a sense of accomplishment. And that's like I was telling you on the phone the other night, Tommy, like, I get it. I get why people get so self-absorbed. Well, not self-absorbed, but get so um absorbed in their creation.
right.
Why they can't give it up, if that makes sense. You know what I mean? Like, you
Yeah,
you run into brick wall after brick wall after brick wall, but yet you write another song. You tell another
yeah,
joke, you whatever. And I don't think it's as much about chasing the fame as it is about creating, because it
right.
makes you feel good. It makes you feel accomplished.
That's it. And that's me. I don't long for hitting the stage or playing the bars again or any of that, but I want to write and record and put it out and hope that somebody identifies with it and
Mhm.
use it as a tool to help people. But it
Definitely.
also is a tool that's always helped me. Writing's how I got through everything that I've been through, whether it was abuse or divorce or, losing my brother, whatever. I've used it as a tool to get through those times.
Well, the Bible tells us to do that. Habakkuk 2:2 says to write the vision and make it plain. you know,
Nice.
to write it down. Whatever you're facing, whatever you're battling, write it down. That way the angel of the Lord can carry it. It says to write it in stone. In other words, it means put it down, and there's therapy in that. You know what I mean? Not just not just for you. I mean, it brings healing to you, but then it's going to bring healing to whoever it touches beyond you. You know what I mean? And it really does help. I mean, so it's biblical there. And then you take one of the greatest figures in the Old Testament, David, which was just a precursor to Jesus. I mean, David is the Jesus of the Old Testament. And what was he? He was a writer, a musician. You know what I mean? Yeah, he was a great warrior and king, among a few other things, and adulterer, other things too. But he was a man after God's own heart. And what did he do? He wrote music. You know what I mean? He
Right.
was a performer. And there's a lot to be said for that. You know what I mean? And just number one, getting it out. There's things I've written down in my life over the years of, God, here's my prayers, basically, and stash it away and don't think about it. And a few years later I find it and I realize how much God just really has answered my prayers. You
Mm-hmm.
know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
Right.
And just writing it down. So there's something to be said for that. And I think that goes into music or books or whatever it is you're writing. You know what I mean? You're putting it on paper. You're serious about it, if that makes sense.
Absolutely. And I've always heard musicians refer to songs as their kids.
Hmm.
How do you pick a favorite song, or how do you, it's like your child, um, and it is it's such an addiction to write and to create it. You want to keep doing it. So
Well, and I'm
um,
sure you've got a lot that you want people to know about or express through your music. I mean, especially with your upbringing and everything.
absolutely,
Yeah.
absolutely. And I hope to, I want to write a book about my past and how I've handled it and come up, to find God and hope that it inspires somebody. I want to, whatever it takes to get that message out there. I want it out there.
Yeah.
I think it's important, and I think it'll help, a lot of people eventually.
Well, you need to do it, man. I mean, you're surrounded with enough people that can find you a connection.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Oh
If you
yeah, for sure.
if
Absolutely.
you think about it, really, I mean, God's put you in a place to where, I don't know what your relationship is with Kat or with Larry the Cable Guy or whatever, you know what I mean? But if you have any kind of decent relationship with them and you say, hey, man, this is my goal and this is my dream and this is what I'm working on, who do I need to talk to? I'm
Right.
not asking you to pull any strings, just I'm asking you for a connect, you know?
Right. And they would help any way they could, especially Kat. Kat's been very helpful to me and my family. And we were running into hard times when he found us, and he was a blessing all around.
Sure.
He's a great guy, and he definitely helped me out, and I'm blessed to have him. I really am, and I love that. I love touring with him. I mean, his comedy, of course, is not, not safe for anything really, church or work
Right.
or,
Right.
but he is like, in his heart, he's a Christian. He's a
I was
good
gonna say,
guy,
I
and
think he knows who his
he
savior
knows
is.
he
And
does for
and
sure.
we can, we live in the South. You know what I
Yeah,
mean? Living in the South, everything's a sin. I mean,
yeah,
it just is. And that's, this, I'm probably going to piss a lot of people off by saying this. I'm probably going to piss a lot of people off because I just said piss.
That's what I was thinking.
But,
That's like your third time.
right. But, whenever you leave the South and I get it, you know what I mean? If you don't like cussing, that's fine. You know what I mean?
right,
In all honesty, I mean, cussing really kind of does make you sound ignorant, whatever. But, uh, when you leave the South, that's just it just I mean, I've met so many Christians since I've started traveling for work. And I mean they're potty mouths, you know what I mean?
right,
But love the Lord. And maybe I'm wrong. But I think if well, I don't know how to put it without just putting it, but the term cuss like a sailor comes from sailors. You know what I
right.
mean? From people who worked on the water. Who did Jesus surround himself with?
Hmm.
Friggin' fishermen. You know what I
Yeah,
mean? If you were a fisherman in those days, you were either a fisherman because your family had that business, or you were just kind of needing quick money because you had gambling habits or women habits or alcohol or whatever it was. So it was a quick way to get paid daily. But yet Jesus chose to surround himself with those people. And I'm not saying those people didn't clean up their act and things like that. You know what I mean? But I think cursing, um, I think we kind of take it to an extreme in the South as far as, it's offensive down here to where it's not in other places. And I remember I was 18 or 19 years old and we were in church and the guy said crap, but the other word. And we're just, I mean, he's in the pulpit preaching and we just all kind of look at each other and our buddy who was from Louisiana just kind of tapped me on the shoulder. He said, I'll tell you afterwards. Well, the guy preaching, I should have prefaced, was from Iceland. And he went on to say, I know what I just said, and I probably shouldn't have said it in here, but in Iceland, that's just a term for crap. You know what I mean? Or, whether it be physical crap or the word crap. He said, we have our own curse words, you know what I mean, that we think are sinful, I guess, so to speak. So I think it's definitely origin based. It's where you're at, but at the same time, you shouldn't offend your brother or sister, but
right.
I don't hold people who have a potty mouth as
You don't
dying
view,
and going to hell.
yeah,
You know
but so
what I
you
mean?
don't view them as non-Christians.
Right,
Yeah.
because there's definitely times in my life, that I've been known to say a word or two,
Stump that toe in the middle of the night.
right?
Mhm.
Right. So, I think that we need to see the intent of a man's heart as God does.
Yeah,
Um,
I've got a boss. He's actually he grew up in Wisconsin. And I mean, he loves God. He's a big Christian. He's actually writing a book, but he said that's the one thing that he's been trying to tone down is his cussing. He said, but growing up in Wisconsin, it wasn't a big deal, like you said. I mean, it was just normal. And so yeah, I totally agree
well,
with
and
that.
I
I
think
mean,
I think the thing we need to ask right there: are we trying to tone it down because God's telling us to tone it down, or are we trying to tone it down because we're afraid it's offending
well,
others? And either way, you should do it because that's biblical. You know what I
right.
mean? We should not
Well,
offend our brothers.
and also, biblically, like cussing would be like if I was demeaning you,
Yes.
anything I'm saying to you that's demeaning. So if I said, I can't think of an
Hey,
example,
Wes, you're
but
stupid.
right, that's me cussing you
Yeah.
technically.
Yeah.
I mean, so you got to take that into context too.
Yeah.
I mean,
Weird rant. Sorry, Tommy.
yeah.
No, it's
But the
cool.
music,
I
back
mean,
to you,
that's
Tom.
that's the that's the one thing that was hard for me because I was a cusser big time growing up, and like so when I found God, um, I still didn't think much of it. I still thought the same thing. I was like, don't matter what I say. God knows what's in my heart, then it doesn't matter. But I don't know. I guess the years come through and just naturally I've quit cussing and
hmm
unless I just get really angry, and
Yeah.
then it just comes out. But it don't take it. It's not me to be angry a lot. So,
Right. Right.
um,
I got you.
so it doesn't happen much, but and that's one thing I wanted to say too, just when you were talking about that, like growing up as well, I want to, I'm proud to also, I never was in drugs or drinking or fighting or anything. Like I never dealt with the things that happened to me in those ways. And I'm really proud of that. I'm not a smoker, drinker, don't do drugs. I didn't try pot until I was 44 or 45, and I tried it for my back to see if it would help, and it didn't. So I was done.
Right.
Um, but like, you know, our surroundings and what we come up on is natural. Like I don't think of pot as being a big drug, because it helps people, it can help people. It can be abused like anything else, but
Yeah. And I think that's the
it,
key. I mean, to me, pot is no worse than alcohol.
no,
I think used in the right settings, there are a ton of medicinal purposes for it,
right,
and uses, but it's when we want to escape or we want to feel good for a little while that comes in. And I'm not knocking anybody who has an addiction problem,
right,
no matter what it may be, because you know what, you got a problem. You know what I'm saying? The we I share this story all the time. When Les passed away, um, he had a problem. He had an
yeah,
addiction, and he called me and he wanted some food, and I carried him some food, and he asked me for some money, and like, I'm not giving you money to go buy dope with. I'm not.
right,
You know what I mean? And he got a little upset and a little angry, and I told him, I said, man, I tell you what, whenever you want to change your life, call me.
right,
Until then, I'm done.
yeah,
And I left, and 2 months later, he was dead. You know,
right,
and that has weighed on me so heavy. Like, what if I had been more tolerant? What if I had, because he and Marcus are my brothers. They're not my blood physical brothers. They're my cousins, but we
right,
grew up like brothers. I consider them my brothers. What if I had been more tolerant to my brother? So if I couldn't have been more tolerant to him, how have I been to others? And I have, since he's passed these last 10 years, I've really examined my own life because I found myself doing things probably worse than what he was doing at times. At least he had an excuse for his crap. You know what I mean? He had an accident and was horribly disfigured from it. Um, did he have to become addicted the way he was addicted? No, but he had a problem. And that's the thing to me with drugs and alcohol is like, I don't look down on people who struggle with that, because their
no,
sin's no greater than mine. You know what I'm saying?
mm,
The only thing is is realizing you have a problem and wanting help. And the problem is I think I had an addict friend of mine one time say, "You think I want to be this way? Do you think this is what I want? No." But tomorrow never comes.
True.
Every day, today is the last day. I'm going to get my fix and I'm going to quit today. But when the withdrawal set in, the DT set in, your mind starts racing. Tomorrow never comes. You know what I mean?
Right.
And it never comes for them because I feel like they don't have somebody that they can go to and legit say, "Hey, I have a problem and I need help," because we
Right.
want to push them away. And part of that's their fault because they've stole from us or lied to us or whatever it is they've done to hurt us. But we've got to be more forgiving and more compassionate and loving to those people. You know what I mean? Help them through that.
Yeah. And I was the same way. I was very, when my brother got in trouble, the last, um, I found out about it the last year of his life that he had an addiction issue, and I had no idea. And he had lied to all of us and taken advantage. And I had told everybody, I was like, man, he can't come back to live with me. He can't come back here. He can't do this or that. But then, man, when he showed up on my doorstep, knocked on my door, all that went out the window.
Right.
I knew I had to just embrace him and help. And I know that last 6 months of his life that he was out of jail, he was clean,
Hmm.
and I know that for sure. And I know, um, he may not have been sober all the time, but he was clean. He wasn't doing the things he had done. And we have to reach out to those people and be forgiving. And it's hard. I got a friend now, a former bandmate, that really needs that kind of forgiveness and that kind of help. And I've been kind of ignoring it, and I really shouldn't. I need to reach out to him and try to help him.
Well, I think people definitely need tough love. You know what I'm saying?
Of
Hey,
course.
get your crap together. I'm willing to help. You know what I mean?
Right.
You need that tough love. But man, I have dreams about Les where he's there and I'm talking to him and he goes to talk back and I can't hear him. His lips are moving, but I can't hear him. And he gets so angry. You know what I mean? Just so angry to the point to where he starts kind of destroying everything. And I mean, Les, he was huge,
Right.
um, like a gorilla, but he's so angry. And then I wake up, and for a long time I didn't understand what that meant. And now I think I wasn't hearing his cries. You know what I mean? I
Yeah.
wasn't hearing him because he didn't know how to say it. He didn't want to disappoint anybody and hurt anybody any more than what he had. But what if that day I had said, "Okay, today's the day." What if I had
Yeah.
done it? And I mean, it may not have changed anything, but what if I had been more compassionate and loving? And that's one thing I've tried to do, is be more compassionate and loving and more understanding, because it can be me. You know what I mean? I've had my own struggles, my own
Right.
issues, and thankfully I had people in my life that showed me grace and showed me love, um,
Absolutely.
we need to do more of that. Um, so you guys traveled, kind of around the Southeast playing. When did it end?
So, Beyond the Ashes only lasted a couple years, so probably 2003 ish. Um, I did other bands. I did a band called Skarstruck, which was a metal band, kind of Pantera-ish.
Yeah.
And I did that. And that, I don't know, man, that's been over for probably 10 years or more. And I just, it got hard for me to do the same metal stuff. The older I got, the more my voice, my throat couldn't handle it. And I had to reinvent myself basically. And that was hard to accept, for me, that I couldn't do what I used to be able to do so easily. So I quit doing that, and just when I started touring and doing merch for people, I found that other side, that it still satisfied me, the same. So I I never really quit, but I did, I guess, unintentionally.
Yeah. Well, as far as touring, I mean, you're still writing, you're still doing, and I encourage
Still
you to
writing and doing.
keep, you know. So tell us, what was it like touring with Larry the Cable Guy?
Cable Guy was great. The first time I went to meet him, the night, I went to work for him, and he was out back smoking a cigar, and he comes in, and I'm like, "Hey man, I'm your new merch guy." And he's like, "Hey man," and he comes up and he grabs the side of my face and comes in like he's gonna kiss me. And then he's like, "Man, I better watch it. They're gonna wonder what I was out here smoking." And he's like, I'm coming in singing Bugs Bunny opera tunes and trying to make out with my merch guy." and and from there, I mean, it was just he is who you see on stage. He's goofy all the time. He's great, funny guy. And Jeff Foxworthy was with him, and he was the same guy you see on stage basically as Jeff as well. He's just really down to earth, really good guy. But it was so lighthearted. It was what I needed at that moment was with that lightheartedness. And both of those guys are Christians, and they really I remember going to see Jeff Foxworthy after I got saved and telling him I was like, "Dude," I was like, "You never knew it. I was going through some of the worst time in my life when I was with you guys." And I was like, "Man, I got saved and I've found God." And he was just so happy that to hear that and to know. And he's like, "Tommy, I would have never known you were going through that." But he's like, "Man," he's like, "I love that you got through it and you're good." And I've seen both those guys since I've quit touring with those, and they still love me the same, and they still remember, and they're great. So they're just really down to earth guys, really good guys. Jeff Foxworthy is the most down to earth guy, who is probably the biggest comedian out there, or at least at one time he was. And he travels on regular flights and stuff. And if you see him at the airport and come up to him, he's really sweet, really good guy. So it was a blessing touring with those guys. And
So I don't know if you can comment on this or not, but I've heard that Larry the Cable Guy's accent is not really his accent.
It's not. No, it's not how he talks normal.
Yeah.
And he doesn't go by Larry either. He goes by his first name. And
sure.
He is a great guy. He's
what
just
a genius comedy act, though. You know what I mean?
Oh, it is.
Because from what I understand, he's from up north, so to be able to adapt that southern lingo, I guess. You know what I mean?
Yeah, he lives in Nebraska, and
yeah,
he's huge.
Which I guess he was probably still a redneck, being from Nebraska. Right. Parts he's from. We had some guys come in from New York one day, and they were doing some work at the shop, one of our customers, and we were teaching them some things to do some repairs to their tooling. And guy said I heard how he was talking, and he said he was from New York. And I said, "Oh, you're one of those, one of those people." He said, "No, you don't understand. There's New York City, and then there's New York, and we're rednecks in New York,
Right.
So, crash course and rednecks are everywhere.
Yeah, the first time I went to New York, it was the country. So yeah, I got to see that side of it. Yeah. I was like, "Man,
I'm sorry. Go ahead.
No. I was just like, man, we're doing country music and we're going to New York. It made no sense to me until I got there."
Yeah.
I bet that was wild. Yeah, you were talking about how Jeff, how he rides on like normal airplanes and, Southwest or however he gets there. A few years ago, I saw a thing about Tony Hawk, professional skateboarder. And he had all these memes of like real things that happens to him. And it is hilarious because nobody knows who he is. Like he said, he went to like get went to Enterprise to rent a car. And he said he waited 4 hours and they thought it was a joke. They were like, "Tony Hawk's here to rent a car." Yeah, right. And so like they just like deleted his reservation and everything.
That's funny.
And so it's just funny.
Well, they say the same thing about Keanu Reeves, that like he takes public transit. And I read an article, and there again, it may all be crap, but they were coming in from a flight where he flew coach, and they were delayed. And it was only like a 30-minute flight, like a 2.5-hour drive to where they were going or whatever. And he rented a van and told everybody that was going that way if they wanted to ride that they were going, And they had a driver or whatever, and he dropped everybody off at their house before he went home, which, is probably smart, so nobody knows where he lives. Right. But at the same time, like they said, he was helping everybody load and unload their baggage and all
Hmm.
this stuff, and there's something to be said for that to me. I mean, like, you're still a human being. You're still a
Yeah.
person. Just because you're famous and you've got a ton of money doesn't make you better than anybody. And that's what's wrong, I feel like, with Hollywood and the sports um arena there is you think you're better than everybody, but you're only hot for a second. You know what I mean?
Right.
That 15 minutes of fame is a legit thing. So you might better not step on people. You know what I mean? And if
Exactly.
you're not stepping on people, it may end up lasting a lot longer than what you wanted it or
Yeah.
than what you ever thought it would. You know what I mean? You're only, the Taylor Swifts of the world who can constantly reinvent themselves are few and far between.
Hmm.
Yeah.
There's a lot of people out there that's like, oh yeah, I remember them. You know what I mean?
Right.
Like, oh yeah, I remember that band, or oh yeah, I remember them being in that movie, and they may have been huge in the moment, but it fades.
It
Um,
does.
so we really should treat people like they're people. You know what I mean?
Hmm.
Everybody's the same, and it doesn't just because you've got a lot of money doesn't make you any better than anybody else.
I mean, look at Adam Sandler.
Yeah,
I mean, he wears
Yeah.
gym shorts everywhere he goes. He
yeah.
just walks down the street. It's
And that's probably
crazy.
why paparazzi and stuff doesn't bother him, is because he does make himself accessible.
That's true
Yeah. I
too.
was told early on that you see the same people coming up that when you're going back down. So you
Yeah.
better be nice to them now.
Yeah.
And it makes sense. So,
Yeah. It's
um,
just a matter of time till they pass you.
yeah.
They
Yeah.
get their break for sure.
And you see those same people coming down. And if you were a jerk to them, on your rise, they're not going to be there for you when you're going down. So,
Right. So best person you've toured with or toured for, worked for.
um, man, I'll say a couple for different reasons, but Cat Williams for sure, just because he's been so great to me and such a good guy. And I deal with him directly. I don't have to go through somebody to deal with anything. If we have something to talk about, I text him and he gets back to me. Jody Messina, because she was so loving and helpful. I had an issue where I was supposed to go to Nashville and get on a plane with her and her crew, and my car broke down on the way, and transmission went out, and so they had to reschedule me to fly the next day. And I get there to LA, and she comes up behind me and just wraps her arms around me, and she's like, "What's wrong? You look frazzled." And I was like, I guess you heard about my car. And she's like, "Yeah." She's like, "Baby, if you need a car, just tell me. I've got a car." And she gave me her mother's car that her mother couldn't drive anymore, and she just gave me her mother's car,
Wow.
to help me out. She's just that kind of person. So those two are probably my favorites, and Larry the Cable Guy and Jeff Foxworthy will always be favorites because they're like your uncles. They're just great guys. But those three or four are very special to me. And even the guy who wasn't very nice to me, I still got a lot of respect for him, and if he needed me, I'd go help him today.
Sure.
You know,
Well, I get it. And there again, it's probably one of those situations. You're the help, you know.
yeah,
In their mind, you're the help. Not all of them, but in some of them. Let's touch on Cat for a minute. So
sure,
I have been a Cat Williams fan for a long time. Like, I think he's freaking hilarious in a weird
yeah,
way. He's definitely not your normal comedian. You know what I mean?
no,
Famous, but not ever in any kind of drama. You know.
right,
And then all of a sudden, he does this interview with Shay Shay.
right.
Have y'all watched that?
I don't even know what you're talking about.
Of course,
Yeah. So
yeah,
Shay Shay was a football player, right? I
yes,
believe.
yeah,
Turned commentator, turned podcaster now.
Okay.
And he has Cat Williams on, and Cat just exposes Hollywood.
Oh
Like,
wow.
um, he talks about, and I'm sure you've heard the old saying about, you want to be famous, we'll put you in a dress. All the
yeah,
the famous comedians that the Kevin Harts and Tyler Perry's and all these guys, Martin Lawrence, they really didn't catch their big break till they played a woman,
Oh wow.
and how
Didn't
that
think
is
about that.
how that's degrading. That it's
Hmm.
it's not a hey, this will be funny. It's a hey, we're doing this because we're degrading you,
Mm-hmm.
but you're going to do it for the money.
Almost like a hazing.
Yes, exactly.
Yeah.
Okay.
Exactly. And he talks about how, he was approached in the same manner. Friday after next, was it Friday 2? Ricky Smiley plays a thief Santa Claus, and Cat Williams plays a pimp in it. And one of the scenes is basically we want Cat Williams to be raped
Mm-hmm.
by a big thug, and he just really took a stance and said, "Hey, why do we have to do that?
Mm-hmm.
Why is that funny?" Um, and probably catch a strike for saying that word. But why is assault funny? You
Mm-hmm.
know what I mean? On
Right.
anybody, But he pretty much just laid it out there, and I'm going, holy cow, he's
Mm-hmm.
fixing to get he's
Yeah.
fixing to get slammed. You know what I mean?
He exposed P. Diddy before the situation blew up.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. I mean, he's
Yeah.
just laying it out. It's a pretty. I mean, he's different. He's intellectual
Yes.
in my mind. He's a thinker. And that's what I like about his comedy, because he'll put a joke out there, and I understand why it's funny before he ever gets to the punchline. You know what I mean? Because
Yes.
he's a thinker. But he just goes off in that interview, and I'm like, holy cow, dude, if you weren't canceled before, you're gonna get canceled now. And it's done nothing but help him. It's
It's
blown him
helped
up.
him.
And
Yeah.
and that goes, and I don't know how much of that stuff's true. Um,
Every
you know,
bit of it.
I figure, you know what I'm
Every
saying, but
bit of it.
I'm
Yeah.
not there. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
I'm not there, so I don't know. But I figure it probably is, because there's so many stars that are saying this now. Plus, there's proof with, the Harvey Weinsteins and people like that. Weinstein, is that his name? Anyway,
Right.
um, so I figure there's a lot of truth to it. If it's not all true, there's a lot of
Yeah.
truth to it. Um, and that shows you what telling the truth will really do whenever you have no fear.
Yeah.
And he said that. He said, I'm not worried about getting canceled.
No.
I'm worried about my paycheck. My paycheck's going to be there because I know who signs my paycheck, and that's the Lord. God opens the doors for me, is
He
basically,
said he
yeah.
said that.
Yeah, that's
Wow.
how he puts it out
Awesome.
there. He says, I know I'm doing that, and I'm paraphrasing, but I know I'm doing this because this is what God has called me to do, not because I just want to be rich and famous.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and is he one of the most is he the most famous comedian? No, he's not Kevin Hart, but he is funnier than Kevin Hart to me. Um, and he has seems to have stood his ground.
Mm-hmm.
He did. Yeah. And he spoke his truth, what he knew for a fact. And if you watch any interview with him carefully, you'll notice, or maybe you don't notice, but you will now, he thinks before he answers any question. He don't just pop off. He really thinks about it and puts the correct answer out there. He's careful how he words things and careful what he says, because he wants to tell the truth.
Hmm.
And I love that about him. And he went on that and took that chance. And we went from playing, in reality, I mean, just being straight up, we went from playing half empty arenas to them being packed out and selling out every night.
Yeah. And
And
I
then
believe that's because we're living in a day and a time, and I shared this with a guy that I did a pre-interview with last night. We're living a day and a time, but the Bible says to be aware in the last days, to be aware of false teachers and preachers. And I don't think that just applies to the church. I think that applies to the world in general, because we don't know what is true. You know what I mean?
right,
Aliens have been a mythological thing for forever, and now all of a sudden there's these whistleblowers from the government coming out saying, "Hey," and the government's entertaining it. You know what I mean?
right,
So are they there or are they not? You know what I'm saying? Among so many other things. I mean, the 2014 elections, I guess, or whenever Trump came into office, I can't remember what year was that, 2012. I don't know. Anyway, when Trump took office, is when a lot of this started. And from then till now, like, you don't know what's fact or what's not. You know what I mean? You can't get it from the news. You dang sure can't believe everything you see on the internet. You know what I mean? I
yeah,
heard a song the other day on the radio. Randy Travis. Y'all know about Randy Travis, right? He's had a stroke,
Right.
and I think they said he can sing part of Amazing Grace and then whatever one of his hits were. But Randy Travis has released a new song as Randy Travis, and it's completely AI,
Mm-hmm.
and
Oh
it
wow.
sounds just like him. It's mind blowing, you know.
Huh.
And I knew a few months ago they re-released one of Whitney Houston's biggest songs. I can't remember the one from the movie, Bodyguard. I can't remember the name of the song now, but it sounds just like Whitney Houston.
Mm-hmm.
And then I know there's a lot of country artists that are suing right now because of their their songs songs being released as them that aren't them, you know.
Right.
And so, we don't know what's what
Mm-hmm.
anymore. You know what I mean? And to stand firm in your truth, um, we're living in a day and time where people want to know the truth. But whenever you take somebody like Cat Williams, who's willing to put it out there, and you know what, if everybody calls him crazy, they call him crazy. That's kind of the way it'll go, or you'll be canceled, or people's going to get on the bandwagon. And I think people are getting on the bandwagon because they want to know facts. They're
Right.
tired of the wool being pulled over their eyes.
Mm-hmm.
Well, people got mad that he went on and said that stuff, but the one thing they didn't say is that he was lying.
Right,
So, they got mad that he said it. They said all this stuff, but nobody said he was lying. And
right,
that speaks volumes,
right.
you know.
Well, my biggest fear was somebody trying to take him out. You know what I mean?
We
Um,
have
would
we
be
have very, very high security.
Yeah, and I would
Yeah.
figure so.
But he has since I've been with him for 2 years. He's had high security. He didn't step it up any. It's been high security from day one.
Yeah,
But and that's just Cat.
yeah,
That's also why he don't do meet and greets. He wants to be secured all the time.
yeah.
So
Well, and I
yeah.
and
That's
and I
pretty smart.
and I get that. You know what I
Yeah.
Yeah.
mean? I get that. Whenever you're putting that out there. I mean, who was the girl from American Idol that was taken out, trying to use the right words, by a fan? Just comes up and
Oh
you know
yeah.
meet and
Yeah. I
greet,
can't
and he
remember her name. Yeah.
he takes her out. You know what I mean? So
Really?
yeah, I can't remember her
Yeah.
name now. She was on American Idol a few years back, but beautiful girl, great singer, and some crazed fan just comes up and I don't know I can't remember if he stabbed her or if he shot her, but
I think he
uh,
stabbed her.
I
Yeah.
think so too. Um, and that's the day and times we live in, unfortunately. You know what I mean? You can never be too safe in doing what you're doing. And I would think that security would have to be number one. I know this year wasn't it might have been last year. It was last year. We went to the World of Wheels and I think Cat Williams was playing the BJCC that night.
We
And
were.
man, there was people. I wish I'd have texted you that night, but man, there were people everywhere. Like just
Yes.
lined up to see Cat Williams.
Yeah. I'd have got you in. I wish I'd have known.
Well, and it never crossed my mind. You know what I mean? I just remember coming out like, what the crap? Why are all these people here? And then we saw a sign that said, for Cat Williams or whatever. And
Yeah.
I was like, man, that's what we should have done tonight. Yeah.
Absolutely. We're
So,
we're coming back to Birmingham February 8th. So just remember.
all right. Yeah. Yeah.
Remember
I'd
to
like
hit
to
me
check
up.
it out for sure. For sure. I
Yeah.
wish
Yeah.
I should have had you, I should have tried to pull a favor and get him on the phone.
Yeah.
Uh, no, I wouldn't ask you to do that, man. I'm not that type
He
of.
you'll love the name of the tour next year too. It's he's calling the tour Heaven on Earth. So
Oh,
I'm
nice.
excited
That's
about
cool.
that. Yeah,
Yeah.
very happy about that name. I can't wait to make merchandise for that. So
Yeah.
that'll be fun.
That'll be pretty cool. So, I
Yeah.
mean, it's pretty crazy. I mean, I mean, I imagine it's pretty stressful rolling in and rolling out.
Can be. It can be. But the guys are really good at setting up and getting things done and then we roll into usually if the doors open at 7 o'clock, we usually get there at 4 o'clock, like 3 hours before doors, and set up our merch and get everything going and get ready. And we get done 30 minutes to an hour before doors, but it gives us that extra time just in case something comes up. But it is crazy getting in and out, and then we have to rush to get out as quick as we can so the truck can get on the road and get to the next city. So it can be very stressful.
How many people does it take to make a show happen?
So he has um and I don't know the exact number, but there's a lot because he has just his security is 10 to 12 people.
Yeah.
And then we have, 4 or 5 people that work on the stage stuff and just several people that do a little bit of everything. So we have a good, pretty big crew.
Now, is it the same crew everywhere you go and y'all handle everything, or is it the same crew and then y'all hire, people to run forklifts and build the stage and things like that?
Well, there's a local crew at every show
Yeah.
that helps do stuff, but our 4 or 5 guys are in control of them and
Yeah.
have to tell them what to do.
And that's what I figured. I figured it was like we go to these trade shows and there's a company that's over these things and you come in and you set up your booth, but they place everything. They bring it off the trucks and all this stuff. And we're
Right.
constantly having to slip the forklift drivers $20 or $50 to get our stuff first so we can get done and get out of there. You know what I mean? So I figured it was that way.
It
Because I would
is.
imagine that would be a ton of people to employ if you didn't have some sort of group that handled workers or whatever like that.
Yeah,
So
it is. He handles everything. That's one thing I like about his organization is he's his own promoter. He don't advertise really. It's pretty much word of mouth or Facebook
mhm,
that does his advertising. He doesn't do any big promotions. You're not going to see a Cat Williams TV advertisement or anything like that. Word of mouth has just done it,
right.
and he knows his business. He's such a smart guy.
Yeah. And I remember him saying that in that interview, of how he's hitting X amount of shows a year and selling out X amount of shows a year, and none of that is through TV or radio ads or anything like
No,
that. You know what I mean? That's
no.
pretty huge.
Yeah,
Um,
I tried to get him to do a radio interview, and he wouldn't budge on it. He will not do any kind of press like that. He just don't do it. So
yeah,
unless he just feels like he's got something to say, like the Club Shay Shay thing, he just sticks to word of mouth and
right.
lets it go.
And that's smart, you know what I mean? Evidently it's working for him, for sure.
It is,
Um,
and it's one less person to pay.
yeah, yep, you're right about that.
Yeah,
You're right
one
about
less
that.
person he's got to pay. Yeah, so
That's right.
it's a blessing.
Well, man, is there anything else you want to cover? Anything else that
Not that I can think of, unless you guys have any questions or anything. I just, I want people to know, no matter what they think or how they feel, know that God's with them and God's always got a plan, and He's constantly working in your life, no matter what you believe or what you think you're doing on your own. I think that's an important message to have out there.
absolutely, I 100% agree with that, man. It doesn't matter where you're at, it's gonna change. You know what I mean? It may be
Yes,
my one of my bosses at work, he says this right here. He said, Wesley, you're either going through a storm, about to go through a storm, or just coming out of a storm. You know what I mean?
yes,
Like it's life is gonna happen, but it's a
yeah,
matter of whether or not you're prepared, you know.
absolutely,
And tomorrow will be different. It's just a matter of how you handle it. And the thing about it is I don't, I've tried it. I've tried to turn my back from God. I sat in my truck one day crying my eyes out, fully expecting to get hit by lightning when I said this, but I said, you know what, God, F you, I'm done. I
yeah,
hate you. I am done.
yeah,
And the Holy Spirit just whispered in my ear and said, okay, which
right,
angered me
Mhm.
further. And I
No,
said,
he K'd you. He didn't even okay. He
yeah, he
just
was
K.
okay.
okay,
Okay. And then basically said, well, when you're done with your tantrum, I'm
right,
here, you know, and Jesus, God, however you want to lump them together, he's a good father. I mean,
yeah,
100%, you know what I mean? And I think about my own children in that moment of how many times they've thrown a temper tantrum or a fit. Or I remember one time, Cullen was about 3 and he wanted to chew some gum. And it's like, nope, you're going to eat your dinner. And I had listened to it till I was done listening to it. And I got up in there and I went in there and I said, look, you're going to eat that food and you're going to quit crying. You'll eat that food, quit crying, you can have that gum, but I'm done listening to it. So he kind of snubs a little bit. I go back in the other room and he starts up again. Candace is in there. She's at wit's end. And I come in there and said, this is the last time I'm going to tell you. If I come back in here and you're still crying, I'm going to tear your tail up. So I walk out and he starts again. So I went and got him and I spanked my son. And it's been few and far between that I've ever had to spank my children, like whip my children, as in daddy's here and you know it's happening. You know what I mean?
Right.
Broke my heart. Broke my heart. He quit crying. He went and he sat down and he ate his dinner and he left the gum on the table and he come in there and he laid down and he put his head on my chest. And I think about that moment in the times when I'm throwing my fit with God, and sometimes he has to chastise me. You know what I mean? Sometimes he has to let me go through it. But he's always there to let me lay my head on his chest. You know what I mean? And I believe in times like when you went through what you went through growing up with the abuse, I was abused as a child by my stepdad. I think it breaks God's heart. It does, but I think he knows that, hey, sometimes you have to go through things in order to number one, build character. And number two, to be able to help somebody else who's struggling and going through the same thing that you just went through, you know?
Right.
And that's one thing I would encourage you, Tommy, is to share that story, you know, wherever you're at, whatever you're going through, man, keep doing it because you're going to continue to find healing through that. You know what I mean? We're not perfect. I'm a huge failure. I'm a crappy husband. I'm a crappy father. I'm a crappy friend. You know what I mean? But thank God that he puts blinders on those people for the most part and allows those people to love me anyway. You
Right.
know, I'm not a mechanic in any kind of way. Like I'm not mechanical. And the other day, my wheel studs on my truck, my lugs had come off, and I hear this noise, and I pull over. Thank God I pulled over. One of them was broken. Four of them were finger loose, and one of them was tight. So I tightened them down as best I could, and I limped home. I didn't have a jack. I limped home, and another one had broke. Well, we cut grass with a buddy of mine, and we're talking about it, and we use my truck, and I'm like, man, well, you know, I got to figure out how to get these wheel studs replaced. You know, I don't know how to do that. I'm Googling it, you know, I'm looking at YouTube videos and stuff, and I definitely don't have the tooling to do it, you know. So I call a local place here and they're like $250. And I'm like, done. You know, I'm thinking that's cheap. You know, I will pay $250 because I don't know what I'm doing. Guy that I work with comes up, he lives down the street here, and he come by, he says, hey man, bring your truck to the house tonight. I said, why? He said, go by on the way home or I rode with him to work that day. He said, we'll go by on the way home, get them wheel studs and them lug nuts, and I'll show you what to do. So, you sure? Yeah. Won't take 10 minutes. Okay. So we get there, and sure enough, within 15 minutes of jacking the truck up, we were done putting it back on the ground, and saved me $250. Now, well, it saved me $200. Two studs and two lug nuts was $48, by the way. But I'm driving home that night, and I just couldn't do anything but thank God. You know what I mean? For friends. You know what I mean? Like,
Yeah.
I grumble and complain about everything, but number one, thank God I had the money. I didn't need to spend the money, but I would have had the money to pay a mechanic to do it. But thank God that he was looking out for me and put me in a place. He saw fit 11 years ago when I went to work there. He saw all the way in the future where I would need a friend to help me do that. Now, I could have done it on my own had I had the tooling, but I didn't have the tooling to do it. There's no way I would have pulled those wheels. I might could have gotten them out, but there's no way I would have pulled them back in because it took an impact to pull them through the rotor, you know? And it just, I don't know, it really put some things into perspective for me last week on just how blessed I truly am and how much God truly is looking out for me. Number one, I could have wrecked and died on the way home. You know what I mean? Like 100%. But something just, it sounded like I had a flat spot in my tire, and something just kept saying, pull over and look, pull over and look. And the only reason was because 15 years ago, I had that happen one other time, you know, but that time it sounded like my brakes grinding. But I thought to myself, I said, well, I'll look at the tire. And when I looked at the tire, I glanced down. Well, I need to check the lug nuts, and I noticed one of them was broken. You know what I mean? But it just goes to show you how God really is looking out for us. It seems at times it seems like an inconvenience, you know, but I think he needs to slow us down at times and just get us to gain perspective, if that makes sense. It's
Yeah,
not that he's trying to put us through anything. Sometimes we got to go through things just to learn,
Mm-hmm.
if that makes sense.
absolutely.
Well, all right, man. Well, I guess we can end it here. If there's anything that you can think of in the future you want to come back on, just let me know. I'm not going to lie to you. I haven't had a chance to read through what you sent me the other night, but I'm very interested in checking that out, and I'm going to do so. Maybe we
Yeah,
can talk more about that.
yeah,
Um,
absolutely.
and I encourage you, man, to keep writing and keep doing, what it is that you're doing and pursuing as far as that goes, because God has definitely put that poet inside of you. You know what I mean?
Right.
Um, and I've known that for years. I mean, 20,
Yeah,
28 years,
Mm-hmm.
yeah,
I've witnessed it, and it may not be packaged the way we think it should be. It may come to us in a crumbled up pizza box, but you open it up and there's keys to a Lamborghini in there. You know what I mean?
right.
So don't look at the packaging, look at the gift,
No,
you know,
that's it.
that's the key. That's for
That's
sure the
it.
key. Well, all right, man. Any websites or anything like that you want to shout out? Anything you
I
want us to?
mean, just my Facebook is out there. Anybody can feel free to hit me up on that. It's Blackmail, BLAKKMAIL. Is my Facebook profile is under, I think, or Tommy Black. Just type in Tommy Black, and feel free to hit me up on there. And I'm here if anybody finds something in this and needs to talk, hit me up. I'll be glad to be that shoulder anytime.
Definitely so, man. I can attest to that.
Yeah,
Tommy is definitely a guy you can talk to for sure, and man, a few words, but usually full of wisdom. I've found in my life anyway, our interactions. So,
well, I appreciate that.
well, man, I love you, buddy. I appreciate you coming on. I appreciate
I
you
love
doing.
you too, brother.
Um, I'll let you know. Probably will be July when this
Okay.
airs. But I'll let you know. I'll give you the dates. Just be looking out. Well, I was trying to get you to get me a timestamp a while ago. I probably
Oh,
could have
sorry,
done
I
it, but
didn't
that's
know. You
okay.
just,
I know it's towards the end. What you were saying, I'm probably going to use some of that for a teaser video. So,
Okay.
uh, so yeah, just be on the lookout for that. We'll promote it and all that stuff, and
Yeah, let me know. I'll promote it as well.
yeah, keep us in prayer, and
Of
and that's
course.
the main thing. Would I love for this to be our full-time job? Man, heck yeah.
Yeah.
But ultimately, I just want somebody's life to be changed. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Somebody to find that peace that they're looking for, and um there's one way to God, and that's Jesus Christ, but there's 1,000 ways, a million ways to Jesus. You may find
Right.
him through drug addiction or through women or depression or whatever, but as long as you find him, that's what matters.
It is.